Galaxy called it a suicide mission. Space Marines didn't give a F. If you are not a heretic, then declare your city of origin. Leave a comment, a like, and subscribe to the Emperor's Glory. At the conclusion, rate this tale from 0 to 10. The Emperor protects. The Kythara had faced extinction twice in their recorded history. Both times, their proud feline civilization had clawed back from the brink through serious, cunning, patience, and careful strategy. Commander Veltar believed their tactical doctrine was flawless. Strike from shadows, retreat when outnumbered, preserve forces for decisive moments. That was before the Zephyrians arrived. The reptilian invaders had swept through 3 Kythara colony worlds in as many months, their cold efficiency terrifying. Unlike the honor-bound warfare the Kythara understood, these scaled monsters fought with pure calculation. No mercy, no prisoners, no negotiation. They simply consumed everything in their path like some mechanical plague. Now they had reached Kythara Prime itself. Veltar stood in the orbital command center, watching his homeworld's defense grid fail piece by piece. The Zephyrian fleet hung in space like obsidian daggers, methodically dismantling each station with precision that made his whiskers twitch with unease. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission," reported Navigation Officer Silia, her nervous ears flattened against her skull. "Unknown vessel, human designation." Human? Veltar's golden eyes narrowed. He'd heard whispers of this mysterious species, bipedal mammals from some distant sector, rumored to be either primitive savages or dangerous fanatics. Put them through. The holographic display flickered, revealing a feared, scarred human face within what appeared to be a metal skull. The creature's eyes held an intensity that made Veltar's predatory instincts scream warnings. "This is Captain Thaddeus of the Crimson Fist's 3rd Company. We received your distress beacon. What's your situation?" "Your Space Marines?" Veltar had heard that term before, whispered in trading posts. Super soldiers from the mysterious Imperium of Man. "I am Commander Veltar of the Kythara Defense Fleet. We face invasion by a superior force. The—" "Hexano scum!" the human interrupted, his voice a mechanical growl. "We know of these disgusted reptilian filth. They struck an imperial world 2 sectors over, left nothing but ash and bones." "Then you understand our desperate situation is hopeless," Veltar said, his ears drooping. "We cannot match their numbers or technology. Perhaps if you have evacuation ships." The human's laugh was harsh, devoid of humor. "Evacuation? Brother, we didn't cross half the galaxy to run from lizard spawn. How many of them are we looking at?" "Intelligence suggests 300 vessels," Silia reported, checking her instruments. "Heavy cruisers, support craft, and what appears to be a capital ship the size of a small moon." 300? The human's scarred lips pulled back in what might have been a smile. "Huh. Perfect. Been too quiet lately." Veltar stared at the transmission in confusion. I don't understand. You have a single ship. How can you possibly?" "The Emperor protects," the Space Marine said simply. "And brother, we didn't survive 10,000 years of war by running from bad odds." "Transmitting tactical data now. Prepare your forces for immediate assault." "Assault?" Veltar's voice cracked. "Captain Thaddeus, with respect, this is madness! A direct attack against such numbers!" The transmission cut off. Within minutes, proximity alarms screamed as a massive vessel decloaked mere kilometers from the Zephyrian fleet's flank. The ship was a brutal wedge of adamantium and fury, bristling with weapons that spoke of a species born for war. Gothic spires and eagle iconography decorated its hull like ceremonial scars. "By the ancestors," whispered Celaya, "it's a strike cruiser. How did sensors not detect its approach?" Before Veltar could respond, the human vessel opened fire. The barrage was unlike anything in Kythara military doctrine. No careful probing attacks or tactical positioning, just overwhelming violence delivered with religious fervor. Lance batteries carved through Zephyrian shields like prayer through silence, and torpedo volleys struck with the force of falling stars. But what truly stunned Veltar was what happened next. Instead of withdrawing after the initial strike, the human ship accelerated directly into the enemy formation. "They're ramming speed?" Celia breathed. "They're actually charging into the center of the fleet." The strike cruiser's Vox channels crackled to life, broadcasting on all frequencies. What emerged was not tactical coordination, but something far more primal, the sound of warriors singing. "For he is the Emperor, and he is our shield," boomed hundreds of superhuman voices in perfect unison. "Against the alien and the heretic, we are his sword. In darkness most dire, his light shall guide us. In battle most desperate, his strength shall sustain us." The Kythara bridge fell silent. Even the tactical displays seemed frozen as they processed what they were witnessing. "Are they singing war hymns?" Veltar asked weakly. "Desperate? While flying into certain death?" The answer came as the strike cruiser reached the Zephyrian battle line. Instead of the expected explosion, boarding pods erupted from the ship's flanks like metallic spores. Dozens of them, each carrying death toward reptilian vessels. "Impossible," Celia gasped, her instruments tracking the pod's trajectories. "They're boarding the enemy ships directly. That's not tactics, that's ritual suicide." But the Zephyrians were clearly not prepared for such an assault. Their precise formations began to falter as pod after pod breached their hulls. Internal explosions bloomed like flowers of destruction, and Veltar realized something incredible was happening. The humans were winning. "Commander," Celia's voice was barely a whisper, "I'm detecting massive casualties aboard the Zephyrian vessels, whatever these space marines are doing inside those ships." A new transmission cut through the chaos. This time, it came from within a Zephyrian cruiser itself, the signal crackling with weapons fire and inhuman roars. "This is Brother Sergeant Maximus to all Kythara forces." The voice was calm despite the obvious battle raging around him. "Emperor's light, these lizards bleed beautifully. Recommend immediate assault on their left flank. We've removed their command structure and primary weapons. They're ripe for the killing." Veltar looked at his tactical display in shock. 7 Zephyrian ships were already going dark, their cold efficiency crumbling under an assault that defied every principle of warfare he understood. "Sir," Celia's voice held an edge of desperate hope, "the humans are requesting our support. They've actually created an opening." Through the observation ports, Veltar could see the impossible unfolding. The Zephyrian fleet, which had seemed invincible mere hours ago, was bleeding. Ships listed helplessly as internal fires gutted their systems. The mechanical precision that made them so terrifying had shattered against something even more frightening. Beings who simply refused to acknowledge that some battles couldn't be won. As he watched, another boarding pod found its target. This time, the Vox picked up something that would haunt Veltar's dreams for cycles to come. The sound of a Space Marine's ha as he carved through enemies who had never known fear until now. "All ships," Veltar heard himself saying, his voice steadier than he felt. "Prepare for attack. The humans have given us a chance." "Sir?" Celia's ears perked forward in surprised confusion. "The humans? We don't even know what they are." Veltar watched another Zephyrian vessel die as its reactor core breached from within. In all his campaigns, he had never seen anything like this. These humans didn't fight like any species he knew. They fought like natural disasters given purpose and faith. And somehow, impossibly, they were making the impossible possible. "I don't know what they are either," Veltar admitted, giving the order that would commit his remaining forces to a battle that had no right to be winnable. But right now, they're hope. The Kythara fleet surged forward, following in the wake of warriors who sang hymns to their god emperor while turning certain death into glorious victory. Captain Vorthak's mandibles clicked nervously as he reviewed the tactical display. 3 standard cycles had passed since the humans arrived, and their behavior patterns defied every military doctrine in the Galactic Alliance Codex. The red indicators showing Tyrannid advance positions flickered ominously across the holographic projection. "They're doing it again," Lieutenant Zephyr whispered, her crystalline feathers rustling with anxiety. The avian officer gestured toward the monitoring screens showing human positions. The Space Marines just requested orbital bombardment on their own location. That's impossible," stammered Commander Thornhoof, his bovine features creased with confusion. "No species survives by calling destruction upon themselves." Vorthak's secondary arms adjusted the display magnification. Through the drone feeds, they watched Battle Brother Maximus standing atop a rockcrete bunker, his blue and white armor gleaming despite 3 days of continuous warfare. The Space Marine was literally surrounded by hundreds of screeching hormagaunts, their razor-sharp claws seeking any weakness in his ceramite plating. "Brother Captain," Maximus's voice crackled through the Vox system, remarkably calm considering his situation. "I have visual confirmation on the Tyrannid bioship landing site, requesting immediate orbital strike on my position." "Are you certain, brother?" came the reply from Captain Thaddeus aboard their strike cruiser. "The Emperor protects," Maximus responded, crushing a leaping hormagaunt with his bare fist. "Execute Exterminatus Protocol 77 Alpha." Zephyr's fearful head crest flattened in terror. "He's requesting they destroy the entire grid sector, with him in it!" The alien commanders watched in horrified fascination as lance batteries from the human vessel began charging. Energy readings spiked beyond their instruments' maximum range. "This is madness," Thornhoof muttered. "They're going to kill their own warrior." "Negative," Vorthak corrected, studying the tactical patterns. "Watch the positioning. He's not trapped, he's bait." The orbital strike lanced down like the wrath of an angry god. The entire mountainside vanished in a pillar of superheated plasma that reached into the upper atmosphere. When the light faded, a perfectly circular crater stretched for kilometers. The Tyrannid advance spearhead had been completely vaporized. "Situation report, Brother Maximus." Captain Thaddeus's voice cut through the static. "Alive and operational, Captain. Minor armor damage only. Recommend immediate follow-up with drop pod assault while the Xenos are disrupted." Zephyr's beak hung open. He survived that? "Space Marines are remarkably durable," Vorthak admitted grudgingly. His own warriors would have been atomized instantly by such firepower. The tactical display suddenly erupted with new contact warnings. A fresh wave of Tyranid organisms was emerging from the underground tunnel networks, having bypassed the orbital bombardment entirely. Worse, these were larger specimens, warriors, carnifexes, and something that registered as a hive tyrant. "All units, this is Brother Captain Thaddeus," the Vox channels crackled. "Phase 2 initiated. Sisters of Battle commence purification protocol." "What's purification protocol?" Thornhoof asked, nervously. Their question was answered moments later as armored figures in power armor descended from the sky on jump packs, trailing flames from their back-mounted units. The Sisters of Battle landed in perfect formation directly in front of the emerging Tyranid swarm. Sister Superior Celestine raised her bolt pistol and power sword. "Sisters, today we cleanse this world in the Emperor's name. Let no Xenos filth survive our righteous fury." "For the Emperor!" came the unified response from dozens of armored women. What followed could only be described as methodical slaughter set to hymns. The sisters advanced in perfect synchronization, their bolters thundering in precise volleys while they sang ancient battle prayers. Heavy flamers swept across Tyranid ranks, turning chitinous bodies into screaming torches. "Burn, heretic!" Sister Magdalene shouted, her heavy flamer cutting down a charging carnifex. "Feel the Emperor's judgment!" The alien observers were transfixed by the spectacle. These humans fought with religious fervor that bordered on the psychotic, yet their tactics were flawlessly executed. Every movement was calculated, every shot deliberate. "They're enjoying this," Zephyr whispered in shock. Commander Thornhoof's massive hands trembled slightly. "My people are peaceful herbivores. We've never seen such enthusiasm for violence." Sister Celestine spun gracefully as a Tyranid warrior's scything talon missed her by centimeters. Her power sword severed the creature's arm, while her bolt pistol put 3 rounds through its head. "The Emperor guides my blade. Death to all who oppose humanity!" "Contact rear formation!" Lieutenant Marcus's voice cut through the hymns. "Multiple bioforms approaching from Sector 7." Without hesitation, half the sisters wheeled around to face the new threat. Their formation never wavered, their songs never faltered. If anything, the presence of more enemies seemed to invigorate them further. "They fight like they're already dead," Vorthok observed. "No fear of loss, no hesitation before superior numbers." A new voice joined the Vox channels, gruff, mechanical, filled with binary cant. "This is Magos Biologist's call, beginning specimen collection protocols." From the eastern ridge, red-robed figures of the Adeptus Mechanicus descended into the battlefield. Where the Space Marines brought overwhelming force and the Sisters brought righteous fury, the Tech Priests brought cold, scientific curiosity. "Fascinating bioadaptation patterns," Call's synthesized voice observed as he calmly dissected a still-living hormigaunt. "The chitinous plating shows remarkable stress distribution characteristics." A Tyranid warrior charged the Tech Priest, only to be intercepted by a servo skull firing a conversion beamer. The creature simply ceased to exist, reduced to component molecules. Specimen collection efficiency at optimal parameters, Call continued, apparently unbothered by the carnage around him. Recommend priority extraction of synaptic node organisms. The alien commanders watched in bewilderment as the tech priest walked calmly through the battlefield, occasionally pausing to collect biological samples while his servoskulls and mechadendrites handled any approaching threats with casual efficiency. "They treat this like a research expedition," Thornhoof muttered. New tactical markers appeared on the display. Imperial Guard regiments were advancing from multiple vectors. Their formations precise despite the chaotic battlefield conditions. "All Guard units, this is Colonel Kravik," came a crisp voice over the command channel. "Fix bayonets and prepare for close assault. The Emperor expects every man to do his duty." Zephyr's sensors tracked thousands of human soldiers advancing in perfect order toward odds that should have been mathematically impossible to overcome. Their tactical computers must be malfunctioning. They're outnumbered 50-1. "Negative," Vorthok corrected, studying the formation patterns. "Their calculations are precise. They know exactly what they're facing." The Guard regiments struck the Tyranid flanks like a steel avalanche. Luzgun volleys lit up the battlefield, while heavy weapons teams systematically eliminated larger bioforms. When ammunition ran low, they drew bayonets and charged into melee combat without hesitation. "For Cadia!" Sergeant Corrin screamed, his chainsword tearing through Hormigaunt chitin. "The Guard dies standing!" The battle cry was taken up by thousands of voices. Human soldiers fought with desperate courage that transformed individual weakness into collective strength. Where one fell, two more stepped forward to fill the gap. A massive shadow fell across the battlefield as something enormous emerged from the deepest tunnel systems. The Hive Tyrant stood 30 meters tall, its biocannons already charging with corrosive acids. "Priority target identified," Captain Thaddeus announced. "All units converge on grid reference 779. What happened next defied every tactical doctrine the alien observers knew. Instead of coordinated retreat or defensive positioning, every human unit on the battlefield simultaneously charged directly toward the massive creature. "Waj!" came an unexpected voice over the communications. "That's a proper big un! We wants to crumpet!" Vorthak's mandibles clicked in surprised. "Are those orcs?" A ramshackle spacecraft had apparently crash-landed nearby, disgorging dozens of green-skinned humanoids who immediately joined the assault with primitive but effective weapons. "We ain't missing a good fight!" bellowed an orc warboss, his power claw crackling with energy. "Come on, boys! Let's show these ummies how it's done!" The Tyranid Hive Tyrant found itself under simultaneous assault from Space Marines, Sisters of Battle, Imperial Guard, Adeptus Mechanicus, and now Orcs, all apparently working in perfect coordination despite their vastly different combat doctrines. Sister Celestine leaped impossible heights with her jump pack, power sword aimed at the creature's primary sensory cluster. "Die, abomination! The Emperor's light burns away all darkness!" Brother Captain Thaddeus materialized via teleportarium directly beneath the Hive Tyrant, his thunderhammer crackling with power fields. "For the Primarch! For Gilliman! For the Emperor!" The combined assault should have been chaos. Instead, it flowed like a deadly dance, each unit supporting the others through instinctive coordination. "How are they doing this?" Zephyr whispered. The Hive Tyrant's death scream echoed across the battlefield as multiple power weapons found vital organ clusters simultaneously. Its massive form toppled backward, crushing dozens of lesser Tyranids beneath its bulk. But the victory celebration was short-lived. The tactical displays suddenly lit up with new contact warnings, hundreds of them, approaching from every direction. "This is impossible," Thornhoof stammered. "The tunnel networks extend for thousands of kilometers. There must be millions of them down there." Captain Thaddeus's voice cut through the growing alarm. "All Imperial forces, prepare for extended engagement. Astropathic message transmitted to nearest fleet elements. Estimated arrival time 6 standard days." 6 days! The aliens realized with growing horror that the humans intended to hold this position for 6 full days against overwhelming odds, waiting for reinforcements that might not even arrive in time. The Tyranid swarms were already emerging from every tunnel entrance, their bioships launching fresh waves of creatures from orbit. The sky began to darken with flying organisms while the ground trembled under the advance of massive land-based bioforms. Human forces began consolidating into defensive positions with practiced efficiency, as if this was simply another routine military exercise rather than an impossible last stand. "The Emperor protects!" came the unified chant across all Vox channels. "The Emperor protects! The Emperor protects!" Vorthok stared at the tactical display showing impossible odds, then at the human defenders who seemed utterly unconcerned by their situation. For the first time in his military career, he began to understand why humanity had survived 10,000 years of galactic warfare. They were absolutely, completely insane. And somehow, that made them terrifying. The Korthok Prime Dominant's mandibles clicked in what the Eldari would have recognized as anticipatory hunger. Its bioship, a writhing mass of chitin and exposed neural clusters, hung in the void like a predatory moon. Through its compound eyes, it observed the mining station orbiting the gas giant Helios 7. "Insignificant prey creatures," it hissed through its Vox synthesis organs. "Their defenses crumble like dried carapace." The station was home to the Tau Watercast diplomatic mission and their newest allies, a coalition of species the Korthak had been systematically devouring across this sector. Leonine Kethvar warriors with their pride-based honor codes, Ursine Mordoon with their clan fortress mentalities. Even the aerial Sylphonics with their scholar cities had fallen to the swarm. But today felt different. The bioship's sensory organs detected something wrong. 3 vessels hung in space near the station, crude, blocky things that offended the Korthak's aesthetic sensibilities. They bore the twin-headed eagle symbol that made the Prime Dominant's stomach acids churn with instinctive revulsion. "Claw," spat Firecast Commander Oris Kayan from the station's command bridge. The blue-skinned Tau's voice carried disgust through the Vox. "Monkey warships! Why did the humans come?" Captain Theron of the Leonine Kethvar flexed his clawed hands nervously. His golden mane rippled as he studied the tactical displays. The Imperium rarely responds to distress calls from Xenos, Commander. Perhaps they seek something else. Before Oris could respond, the Vox crackled with a transmission that made every alien on the bridge flinch. The voice was deep, resonant, and carried an absolute certainty that suggested its owner had never once considered retreat. This is Brother Sergeant Maximus of the Ultramarines 3rd Company. We have received your transmission regarding Tyrannid presence in this system. Ores exchanged glances with Captain Theron. The Tau's understanding of Gothic was excellent, but something in the human's tone suggested concepts that didn't translate properly. "Honored Gula warriors," Ores replied carefully, "we appreciate your response, but this is a suicide mission. Our long-range sensors indicate a bioship the size of a small moon. Our combined forces number less than 3,000. The Korthak swarm has already consumed 17 worlds." Silence stretched across the Vox for several heartbeats. When the Space Marine spoke again, there was fearful something in his voice that made every predator species on the bridge feel suddenly like prey. "Brother Sergeant," came another voice, this one bearing a mechanical cant. "The machine god's algorithms confirm Xeno's casualty projections approach totality. Survival probability 0.002%. "Thank you, Tech Marine Ferris. Tactical assessment, Brother Castor." A third voice, clinical and precise. "Enemy biomass detected. Preliminary scans indicate adaptive evolution beyond standard Tyrannid parameters. Recommend immediate withdrawal." The aliens waited, certain the humans would now demonstrate the logical response to impossible odds. Instead, Brother Sergeant Maximus chuckled, a sound that somehow made the station's hull vibrate ominously. "Excited! Brothers, it appears we face a worthy foe. Tech Marine Ferris, begin sanctification rituals for the drop pods. Brother Castor, prepare teleportarium coordinates for assault pattern Gamma 7. And someone wake up the dreadnought." Captain Theron's leonine features twisted in confusion. "Honored warriors? Perhaps there was a translation error? We said this is a suicide mission." "We heard you correctly, Xenos ally." The warmth in the Space Marine's voice was somehow more terrifying than anger would have been. "The Emperor protects." The Vox clicked off, leaving the command bridge in stunned silence. "What?" asked Sha Sui Mien of the Earthcast, her blue fingers trembling over her instruments. "Does that even mean?" Before anyone could answer, proximity alarms began screaming throughout the station. The Korthak bioship was moving, accelerating toward them with predatory grace. Worse, the sensory arrays detected something that defied rational explanation. The human ships were also moving, not away from the incoming nightmare, but directly toward it. "This is madness," whispered Captain Theron. "3 ships against that thing?" Ores was studying his tactical displays with growing horror. The human vessels were crude by Tau standards, barely more advanced than the primitive spacecraft his people had used millennia ago. Yet something about their approach patterns suggested a level of tactical sophistication that made his combat algorithms recalculate continuously. "Commander," called Sha Sui Mien, "I'm detecting massive energy signatures from the human ships. They're singing." "Singing?" The Vox crackled to life again, but this time it wasn't a single voice. It was dozens of them, raised in harmony that somehow turned the station's metal corridors into the nave of a cathedral. The words were in Gothic, but the universal translator provided subtitles that made every alien on the bridge feel their blood temperature drop several degrees. "And they shall know no fear, in darkness and in fire, for the Emperor, for the throne! In his name let none survive!" The Ursan delegate, Clan Chief Morgan, whose people had faced the Korthak twice and survived only through strategic withdrawal, stared at the displays in naked disbelief. "They're conducting a religious service? While flying into certain death? What species does this? His answer came as the lead human vessel, a battle barge that looked like a flying cathedral crossed with a munitions factory, opened fire on the bioship. The weapon's discharge was visible to the naked eye, columns of light that turned the void into stained glass windows. The bioship shuddered under the impact, then responded with its own weapons, living projectiles that sought heat and motion, acidic spores that ate through armor like sugar through water, and bioplasma that could melt adamantine. The human ships flew through the hellstorm without deviating from their course. Impossible! Nothing, breathed Orez. Nothing could survive that barrage. Commander, Mien's voice was barely a whisper. Sad. I'm reading massive structural damage to all 3 human vessels. Their shields are down, hull breaches on 17 decks. They've lost primary weapons, secondary weapons, and they're still accelerating. The Vox crackled again. This time, the voice belonged to Brother Sergeant Maximus, and he sounded genuinely excited. All stations, prepare for close quarters engagement. Tech Marine Ferris, how are those sanctification rituals proceeding? Blessed ammunition prepared, Brother Sergeant. Each bolt shell has been anointed with sacred oils and inscribed with the Emperor's benedictions. Excellent. Brother Castor, teleportarium status. Coordinates locked. The machine god guides our aim. Captain Theron found his voice. Honored humans, your ships are dying. You must withdraw. This is not your fight. The response came not from the sergeant, but from a new voice, older, bearing the weight of centuries, and filtered through mechanical augmetics that made it sound like the voice of death itself. Young whelp, the voice rumbled. This has been our fight since before your species learned to make fire. I am Brother Ancient Titus, entombed within this dreadnought for 800 years. I have fought tyrannids across a dozen sectors. They are an offense against the Emperor's design for humanity's dominion over the stars. Brother Ancient, Maximus said with obvious reverence, we are honored by your presence. The honor is mine, Sergeant. It has been too long since I have walked among the stars to deliver the Emperor's justice. Let these Xenos witness what it means to be human. On the displays, the impossible was happening. The human ships, burning and broken, had somehow closed to boarding range with the bioship. Explosions flowered along its hull as drop pods, launched from vessels that should have been space debris, punched through its chitin armor like armor-piercing prayers. By the greater good, whispered Orez, they're actually boarding it. The Vox came alive with combat reports that sounded more like religious ecstasy than military communication. Drop Pod Omega reports successful penetration, encountering heavy resistance. Brother Marcus reports 16 confirmed kills. The Emperor protects. Drop Pod Gamma taking fire from bioconstructs. Brother Lucian requests permission to use promethium. Burn the unclean for the Emperor. This is Brother Ancient Titus. I have found the creature's primary neural cluster. Beginning purification protocols. None shall escape the Emperor's light. Captain Theron turned to Oris, his leonine features pale beneath his golden mane. Commander, what exactly are humans? Oris was staring at his displays, watching biosignatures disappear from the Korthak ship with mathematical precision. I don't know anymore. Our intelligence files describe them as primitive, superstitious, and barely united. This, he gestured at the tactical display where human biosigns were advancing deeper into the bioship despite casualties that should have broken any sane force. This defies every tactical doctrine in the Tau military codex. The battle continued for 37 minutes. 37 minutes during which the station's crew listened to humans singing hymns while killing creatures that had devoured 17 worlds. 37 minutes of impossible victories and tactical decisions that violated every principle of logical warfare. Then, suddenly, silence. The bioship hung motionless in space, its bioluminescent organs dark, its weapon limbs drifting lifelessly. The Vox crackled one final time. Brother Sergeant Maximus's voice carried the confident satisfaction of a task completed exactly as the Emperor intended. This is Sergeant Maximus to all Allied forces. The Tyrannid presence has been eliminated. We are returning to our ships. May the Emperor's peace be upon this system. Captain Theron found his voice first. Returning to your ships? How many of you survived? All of us, honored Xenos ally. We are Ultramarines. We know no fear because the Emperor protects his faithful. Oris checked his sensors 3 times before trusting the readings. Impossible! You had 43 warriors aboard that bioship. I'm reading 43 life signs returning. 44, corrected the mechanical voice of Brother Ancient Titus. I am merely between deaths, not among the living. As the human forces extracted themselves from the dead bioship with the same methodical precision they had shown in assault, Oris realized something that made his hands shake. The humans hadn't just won an impossible battle. They had made it look routine. The implications were staggering. If humans could do this, if they could turn suicide missions into casual Tuesday afternoon exercises, what did that make them in the greater galaxy? The answer came as the human ships began moving away, already receiving new orders for their next deployment, their next impossible battle, their next routine miracle. And in the depths of space, something ancient and patient felt a fear of unease as it calculated new probabilities for this sector of the galaxy. Humanity had just announced its presence in a way that could not be ignored. The Kythera Prime orbital fortress blazed like a dying star as the combined Eldari Tau fleet concentrated their firepower on its collapsing shields. Within the command center, Chapter Master Thaddeus watched the tactical display with the same expression he'd worn while eating breakfast, mild annoyance at an inconvenience. "My lord," voxed Sergeant Korath from the lower levels, "the Xenos have breached Deck 7 through 12. Heavy resistance, but they're advancing." "Understood. Continue holding positions." Ambassador Shas El Mien floated beside him, her crisis suit's sensors recording everything. 3 weeks of fighting alongside these humans had taught her that their definition of serious losses was clinically insane. "Chapter Master, perhaps it is time to consider evacuation. Your casualties are approaching 60%. Thaddeus glanced at her with what might have been amusement. 60% operational efficiency is acceptable for our current mission parameters." "Acceptable?" High Farseer Alatok materialized from the shadows, his ancient armor crackling with psychic energy. "You speak of your brother's deaths as if discussing ammunition expenditure." "Serious, because that is precisely what they are, Xenos." Thaddeus turned back to the display. "Serious, the Emperor provides and the Emperor demands. We are his ammunition in this war." The fortress shuddered as another bombardment hammered the failing void shields. Somewhere in the depths, Librarian Cassius was conducting the ritual they'd discovered in the ancient data cores, something the tech priests had called seriously, catastrophically inadvisable, and a violation of 16 separate protocols, which, in Thaddeus's experience, meant it was probably exactly what the Emperor intended. "My lord!" Brother Techmarine Maximus's voice crackled over the vox. "The Tau commander is requesting immediate evacuation. Something about imminent stellar collapse and total system annihilation. The Xenos seem quite agitated." Mien's crisis suit systems flashed urgent warnings. "Chapter Master, our deep space sensors are detecting massive gravitational anomalies. The ritual your librarian is performing, it's destabilizing the entire system's stellar mechanics." "Indeed," Thaddeus replied conversationally. Brother Cassius estimated a 73% probability of catastrophic stellar event. 73% chance of the star exploding? Eliatok's psychic shriek actually cracked several viewport crystals. "And you're proceeding?" "The Emperor protects," Thaddeus said simply. The Farseer stared at him with the fearful dawning horror of someone realizing they'd allied themselves with madmen. "You're going to kill us all!" "Only if the Emperor wills it." In the depths of the fortress, Librarian Cassius continued his chanting in High Gothic, surrounded by the writhing energies of the warp. The ancient device, some relic from the dark age of technology that even the Mechanicus feared to study, pulsed with increasing intensity. Reality itself seemed to bend around it, and somewhere in the distance, Kythera Prime's star began to flicker. "This is insane!" Mien's voice was strained. "The gravitational forces alone will tear apart every ship in the system." "Then perhaps," suggested Thaddeus, "your fleets should consider withdrawing." "We can't leave you here!" The chapter master finally turned to face her fully. For the first time since their alliance began, Mien saw something in his eyes that made her crisis suit's threat assessment systems scream warnings. It wasn't madness. It was something far worse. It was confident, absolute, unshakable faith. "Sister Commander Mien of the Firecast," he said formally, "I thank you for your assistance in this campaign. You have fought with honor." "Thaddeus, don't!" "However, this is where we part ways." He keyed his command vox. "All Imperial forces, implement Protocol Omega. Emperor's blessing and glory in death." Throughout the fortress, the remaining Space Marines began chanting the energetic canticle of sacrifice. Their voices echoed through the corridors as they prepared for what every tactical analysis declared impossible, holding their positions while reality collapsed around them. Mayan sensors showed the approaching enemy fleets, hundreds of ships converging on their position. Behind them, Kythera's star pulsed ominously. "The mathematics don't work. Even if your ritual succeeds, the stellar shockwave will reach enemy positions approximately 14 minutes before it reaches us," Thaddeus finished calmly. "Sufficient time for our purposes." Eliatok's ancient mind reeled. In 1,000 years of war, he had never encountered strategic thinking this beautifully insane, he whispered. The enemy fleets opened fire, their combined firepower finally overwhelming the fortress's void shields. The first enemy boarding craft punched through the hull as the star behind them began its death spiral into supernova. "Brothers!" Thaddeus's voice boomed over the fortress-wide vox. "For the Emperor! For humanity! Show these Xenos how the sons of Terra die!" The response was immediate and thunderous. "The Emperor protects!" What followed was not a battle, but a legend in the making. Space Marines fought with the fury of angels and the dedication of martyrs, each one worth a dozen enemies. They held corridors that should have fallen in minutes for hours. They countercharged when surrounded, fought wounded when crippled, and continued firing when dying. Brother Sergeant Korath, his left arm severed at the elbow, used his remaining hand to prime grenades with his teeth while reciting the aggressive litany of hate. Devastator Squad Marcus, their heavy bolters empty, charged into melee with their bare fists against powered armor, and somehow prevailed through sheer bloody-minded refusal to yield. And through it all, the star grew brighter. "It's working," Mayan whispered, her sensors tracking the enemy's fleet's growing panic as they realized what the humans had done. "They're trying to withdraw, but the gravitational distortions are trapping them in system," Thaddeus confirmed, "as calculated." "This is impossible," Alatak murmured, his farsight showing him futures that made no sense. "According to every probability matrix, you should all be dead." "Death," said Thaddeus, ducking as a plasma blast took his head's former position. "Death is simply another form of service to the Emperor." The star flared brilliant white. "All ships, immediate departure!" Mien broadcast to the Tau fleet. "Stellar collapse imminent!" "What about the Space Marines?" Mien looked at Thaddeus, who was calmly reloading his Stormbolter while his fortress died around him. "They're staying." "Of course we are," Thaddeus said reasonably. "Someone must ensure the ritual completes successfully." The wave front hit the enemy fleets first, a wall of radiation and gravitational force that crushed their ships like insects. The screams on the Vox channels cut off one by one as hundreds of vessels were consumed by stellar fury. "Now would be an excellent time to depart," Thaddeus suggested politely. Mien's transport ship broke atmosphere just as the fortress began its final structural collapse. Through her sensors, she watched the remaining Space Marines form a defensive circle around the ritual chamber, still fighting, still chanting, as the very walls melted around them. "Why?" she transmitted on an open channel. "Why throw your lives away like this?" Thaddeus's voice came back calm and clear through the stellar interference. "Sister Commander, we are not throwing our lives away. We are investing them. The Emperor's will be done." The star exploded. The shockwave raced outward at significant fractions of light speed, consuming the enemy armada, the orbital fortresses, the asteroid belt, and finally the small speck that had been Kythera Prime. For a moment, the entire system blazed brighter than a galaxy's core. When the light faded, nothing remained but expanding gases and cosmic dust. Mayan's fleet regrouped at the system's edge, their sensors showing the complete annihilation of the enemy force. 200 ships and nearly 1,000,000 troops gone. The threat to the sector was ended. "I don't understand," she transmitted to the Eldari flagship. "How did they know it would work?" Alayatak's response came slowly. "They didn't. They simply had faith that it would." "Faith in their calculations?" "No, young Tau. Faith that dying in service to their emperor was the correct action, regardless of outcome. They cared nothing for victory or defeat, only for duty performed with absolute dedication." Mien studied the expanding stellar remnant. That's terrifying." "Yes," Alayatak agreed quietly. "And that, Sister Commander, is why humanity will inherit this galaxy. Not because they are the strongest, or the smartest, or the most advanced. Because they are the only species mad enough to detonate stars as a tactical option. In the depths of space, the expanding shockwave carried strange resonances, echoes that sounded almost like chanting, almost like voices raised in eternal devotion. The Tau sensors classified it as acoustic phenomena generated by stellar debris interaction. But the Eldari knew better. "The Emperor protects," Eliatok whispered, and for the first time in his ancient life he almost believed it. The Kythera system burned bright and cold in the void, another chapter in humanity's endless war. And across the galaxy, in 1,000 battles on 1,000 worlds, other space marines raised their weapons and shouted their defiance at an uncaring universe. The enemy had called it a suicide mission. The space marines called it Tuesday. Humans! Fuck yeah! Angels fall, yet humans rise. Fireborn under shattered skies. If you stand and join our fight, like, subscribe, share through the night.